Under the Texas sun, beyond rows of barbed wire and wooden towers, more than 50,000 Axis prisoners of war lived, worked and waited for news from home. From 1942 to 1946, Texas became one of America's largest POW hubs, holding Germans, Italians, and a smaller number of Japanese prisoners. This is the story of how they arrived, how they lived, and how their presence reshaped Texas communities quietly, legally, and sometimes contentiously. Behind the wire, thousands of POWs captured in North Africa, Italy, and Europe were shipped by convoy to the United States, then carried by rail into Texas. The War Department chose Texas for its space, rail lines, climate, and agricultural needs. The logic was simple: distance from coasts, abundant land, and a wartime labor shortage. By 1943, trains rolled into base camps across the state, each arrival a mix of fear, relief, and uncertainty for the men inside. Their treatment was governed by the 1929 Geneva Convention. POWs were to receive adequate food, shelter, medical care, and pay based on rank. The International Red Cross inspected camps and relayed concerns. In Texas, the U.S. Army set up standardized procedures, clear camp regulations, work options within legal limits, and channels for mail. The rules were not just moral guidelines, they were strategic, ensuring reciprocal treatment for American prisoners. Arrival meant processing, delousing, medical checks, registration, and issue of clothing marked PW. Camps followed a common blueprint: double fences, floodlights, guard towers, and compounds separated by nationality, rank, or security risk. Inside the wire, life was regimented but organized. Barracks with potbelly stoves, mess halls, latrines, infirmaries, and areas for work, sport, and worship. The Army aimed for order, predictability, and compliance with international law. Texas's network included major base camps: Camp Hearne near Bryan, Camp Huntsville, Camp Swift near Bastrop, Camp Howze near Gainesville, Camp Maxey near Paris, and Camp Fannin near Tyler, plus dozens of smaller branch camps. Prisoners could be moved seasonally to meet labor demand. Some sites became locally famous: Hearne, sometimes nicknamed the Fritz Ritz, had active clubs, theater, and education. Others were austere, functional, and remote. Daily life followed a clock: reveille, roll call, breakfast, work details, recreation, and lights out. Men slept in wooden barracks on tiered bunks, personalizing spaces with hand-carved boxes, watercolor paintings, or makeshift shelves. They bartered in canteens, played chess and soccer, and wrote long letters home. The routine bred stability, and with it came small routines of dignity: haircuts, shoe shining, and little gardens coaxed from dusty ground. Work defined much of their Texas experience. With so many Americans serving overseas, farmers needed hands for cotton, citrus, vegetables, and hay. POWs also cut timber, worked in canneries, repaired roads, and loaded sacks at railheads. Paid in canteen credits, they could not be forced into dangerous or war-related industries. Under guard, they rode trucks to fields at dawn. Their labor quietly sustained Texas agriculture through the war. Food and medical care mirrored U.S. Army standards. POWs ate stews, bread, and coffee. Sometimes gardens and canteen purchases included meals. Each base camp had an infirmary. Serious cases went to Army hospitals. Dental care and vaccinations were routine. Red Cross parcels arrived intermittently. Hungry as war worsened in Europe, many prisoners gained weight in Texas, even as they worried about families facing scarcity back home. Education and culture thrived behind the wire. Prisoner-led classes taught language, math, and trades. Chaplains held services. Bands, orchestras, and theater troupes performed to packed barracks. Some camps built elaborate sets and costumes. Others staged chess tournaments and soccer leagues. For many, study and art were lifelong skills to carry into civilian life and distractions from uncertainty about the war's course and their return. But politics simmered inside the fences. Hardline Nazis sometimes intimidated moderates, leading the army to separate fervent ideologues into stricter compounds. Propaganda was banned. Secret symbols and salutes were punished. The U.S. ran information programs and distributed newspapers to broaden viewpoints. Most POWs chose routine over confrontation, but the tension was real. And discipline, so often invisible, held the fragile peace of camp life. Guard details soldiers or men unfit for overseas combat. Some guard units were African American, a stark contrast to the segregated South outside the fence. POWs noticed contradictions, strict fairness under Geneva rules inside, while Jim Crow laws shaped life beyond. Relationships with local Texans vary from wary distance to pragmatic respect, especially with farmers, who came to rely on skilled, dependable teams. Male-connected prisoners to home. Letters censored and delayed were treasured. Female microfilms sped some messages. Others took months. Packages with photos, socks, or sweets became priceless. Censors blacked out sensitive lines, but the act of writing anchored men to their pre-war identities. Sons, husbands, apprentices, roles that camp life sometimes blurred. News of bombings, weddings, births arrived in fragments, powerful and impermanent. Escapes happened, but rarely succeeded. Tunnels collapsed. Distances were vast, and language and uniforms gave men away. Most escapees were recaptured within days, hungry and exhausted. Punishments followed Geneva guidelines. Confinement, reduced privileges, increased security. The Texas landscape, open, exposed, and policed, worked against bold plans. For most prisoners, hope shifted from flight to future, surviving, learning, and going home. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, many Texas-held POWs were sent to Britain or France for short-term labor before repatriation. Italians, now co-belligerents, saw earlier leniency and releases. Repatriation stretched into 1946. With paperwork, transport, and global logistics slowing the process, war's end did not mean instant freedom. It meant queues, transfers, and the slow unwinding of a vast wartime machine. Departures were emotional. Some POWs left gifts, carvings, paintings, carefully folded flags of gratitude. Farmers shook hands with the crews who saved harvests. A number of former prisoners later returned to Texas as immigrants, drawn by memories of civility, work, and space. They married, opened businesses, and told careful stories of guard towers and soccer balls, cotton fields and canteens, fences, and unexpected kindness. Today, markers, museums, and oral histories preserve this chapter, especially at Camp Hearne, reminding us that even in war, law and humanity can share a fence line. Texas's POW story is not one of heroics or headlines, but of daily choices: to feed, to heal, to teach, and to work. Behind the wire, men waited. Beyond it, communities adapted. Together, they wrote a quiet history that still echoes across Texas fields.